Hi, my name is Regina Romandetti, and for this week's assignment and the last assignment for our class, I will be discussing the problem of scale, which is an important issue when thinking about how governments operate. Scale refers to the size and extent of a political community, including how many people a government has to govern and how much territory it controls. As a government becomes larger, it may have more resources and greater power, but it can also become more difficult to effectively meet the needs of its population. Two political thinkers who had different views on this issue were Aristotle and the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes. Aristotle believed that there was an appropriate size for a political community. He did not believe that a state should simply become as large as possible. Instead, a political community needed to be large enough to be self-sufficient, but not so large that it became difficult to govern. Aristotle argued that when a state becomes too large, it becomes harder for government officials and citizens to know one another and harder to maintain effective political order. A government needs to be able to communicate with its population and make decisions that actually respond to the needs of its citizens. Therefore, for Aristotle, there is a problem when political society becomes too large. The government may have more territory and more people, but it can lose the ability to govern it effectively. Thomas Hobbes had a different view of political society. Hobbes was particularly concerned with the problem of disorder and anarchy. He believed that without a strong government, people would live in a condition where there was no common authority capable of maintaining peace and security. Because of this, Hobbes believed that people needed to transfer their authority to a sovereign government. Hobbes describes the Commonwealth as an artificial man. The government is not simply a particular group of individuals. Instead, the government becomes a political authority that continues even when the people occupying government positions change. This idea is important to the development of the modern state because it allows political authority to exist as an institution rather than depending on one particular individual. The difference between Aristotle and Hobbes helps us understand the problem of scale. Aristotle is concerned that a political community can become so large that it becomes difficult to govern effectively, and Hobbes is more concerned with having enough centralized authority to prevent disorder and maintain security. In other words, Aristotle focuses more on the limits that size can place in effective government, while Hobbes emphasizes the importance of a strong central authority. The ideas from McDonald, especially in chapters 7 and 8, also help us think about the relationship between the size of a political community and the ability of government to meet the needs of its population. As political communities become larger, governments have to deal with more people, different interests, greater distances, and more complicated administrative problems. A larger government may have greater resources, but it also has to develop institutions that can communicate with and represent a larger population. Ultimately, the problem of scale is about finding a balance. A government needs to be large and powerful enough to provide security, maintain order, and meet the needs of its population. At the same time, it needs to remain capable of responding to the people it governs. Aristotle and Hobbes approach this problem differently, but both show that the size and organization of a political community have a major effect on how effectively a government can operate. Thank you so much.